fantastic. So if you could just message me, I think we're live right now, and then we'll wait. Excellent. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll go from there. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Bye. Okay, Dina, we should be good.
Okay.
We'll just give it a couple of minutes to let people see us in the group so they can be watching. Diana's going to connect us from the page to the group momentarily. And then we'll be ready to get started. When I see us in the group on my phone, there we are. Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. It's about 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US. So we're just going to wait for folks to hopefully chime in a few minutes. We'll just kind of relax for a second. Thank you. Okay, cool. I see that we're now live in Single Parents Who Travel. Good afternoon. Just wanted to say hello to you from it's rainy here, rainy and cold. How is it for you, Dina? Is it rainy and cold in New York?
Yeah, I'm still stuck in New Jersey right now. I'm waiting to head back to Florida once the really cold weather gets there. So
I'm gonna need you to take me with you to Florida.
I'm telling you,
cut out for this weather.
so it's cold and rainy here too.
Absolutely. So okay, cool. So yeah, we'll just give it another couple of minutes and then get started. I see we have a couple of folks watching. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where you guys are. As I mentioned before, there'll be a live replay or there'll be a recorded replay so you guys can ask your questions and everything and chime in whenever you catch this, depending on what time of day it is for you. I'll just kind of keep an eye out on folks. And then maybe we'll just get started like at 12:08. Because we definitely respect your time. Are you a coffee drinker, Dina? Are you? Do you?
You know, it doesn't like me. It makes me too jittery. I found this wonderful tea that tastes like coffee. It's made with chicory root and it's called Ticino. And they have Ticino, and it has hazelnut and vanilla nut, and then they have French roast. And I feel almost like I'm drinking coffee. I'm definitely not feeling like I'm drinking a tea. That's for sure. But I love it. I love the smell. Most of my candles are coffee scented because I love it so much, but it makes me too jittery.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Well, I have to write that down, Ticino.
Ticino. I think it's Teechino.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Pro tip. All right. We'll give it another minute and then get rolling.
Although I don't have a problem drinking espresso martinis. Oddly enough. I have no problem drinking those, but a cup of coffee in the morning makes me too nuts, you know?
I hear that.
Oh my God.
Well, speaking of morning, we're shifting into afternoon, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who is joining us, and for those who will watch this later and ask their questions. I feel like this conversation is overdue from the standpoint that Single Parents Who Travel has been working with the most amazing travel agent, just really awesome and heartfelt and hardworking and award-winning and just the most incredible travel agent, Dina Rosen from 5-Star Global Travel. We have her on the line today. For those of you who know me, like for real and for real life, you know that, our relationships are everything. And, I consider it an extreme blessing to have found Dina and been working with her now for a little while, because if you guys haven't talked to her, like she is the motor behind the Single Parents Who Travel group trips. We've now done several together, and she's working with us to do the upcoming Dominican Republic trip. Annual trip that we've done, but she's the person who gets on the phone, who makes all the phone calls, who does all the contracts, who gets all the information to you, who's constantly making sure that you've got what you need before the trips start, she is just irreplaceable. She's extremely diligent and she's extremely hardworking and just an absolute pleasure to work with from a travel partnering standpoint. 5-Star Global Travel has done some remarkable things, not just for single parent families, but for people who are getting married. You know, Dina is my personal travel agent for my own upcoming wedding, which tells you how much I trust her. And obviously trust her with all of you, as this is my baby in terms of single parents who travel. So we're really, really happy to be joined by someone who has just been in the industry for such a long time, who knows way more than I do, who I turn to with every question, and who I just rely on wholeheartedly. So welcome everyone to Dina Rosen from 5-Star Global Travel.
Hi.
She is the the travel agent of record for this group. So yes, Dina, if you could just, I mean, how long have you been in business? Where are you located? Tell us a little about yourself.
So I myself go back and forth between New Jersey and Florida. I try more in Florida than in New Jersey because I just like the weather there. Who doesn't like sunshine almost every day, right? I didn't start out my first career in this industry. My first career was working on Wall Street. I did that for many years. A little personal, I'm actually a 9/11 survivor as well. But it was being in that industry, I started getting into doing a lot of corporate travel, private jets, and working with C-level executives. And I kind of really liked it. So I ended up going and starting to do personal travel. Of course, you try and start with friends and family. Doesn't really work out that way. You cannot build a business on friends and family. But I did start doing, you know, some people's and coworkers vacations, personal vacations. And until I found the opportunity to, you know, leave that industry completely and go fully into the travel industry, which is so much more fun than Wall Street. And I touch people's lives. I know that I do. I plan honeymoons, I plan destination weddings, family getaways. And, you know, the one thing that I really hold, you know, to high standards is people's time and people's money. So coming, you know, planning the trips can be hectic. But I actually enjoy it. I do it 7 days a week. I'm available 7 days a week from 9 in the morning until 9 at night. And for the people that are on the West Coast, usually if they need me there later than that or earlier than that, whatever the case might be, I make myself available. But I'm very respectful of people's time and money. And I love, the best part is when they come back and they tell me how wonderful of a time that they had. Anyone can go online and see my reviews online. I'm very thankful for my clients because these clients, I very rarely myself write reviews, you know, good or bad, you know, and for the time that they take to write these, some of them are like mini novels of just going on and on about their experience, how I take time to explain, how I really, you know, I know a lot of times people don't like to get on the phone with travel agents. And I think I'm going a little off, you know, topic right now, but, you know, one of the reasons why, you know, I'm good at what I do is because I take the time to get to know the people. You cannot do that from a form. I ask them questions, the ages of the people. Does anyone have mobility issues? The ages of the children, to make sure that the locations that I'm thinking of sending them to is the right one for them, you know, and asking them about past vacations that they've been on, hotels that they've been to that they loved or they didn't like, you know, that also helps me as a new client, give them a better recommendation, you know. So either way, but I started doing that and I went into this industry and I love every minute of it. And it's had its ups and downs. Clearly, after COVID, we had with our company a number of agents with us, but once COVID hit, they just dropped out. You know, I mean, there was no business after we had to unwind everybody's vacations that they had planned. So we are now hiring them back because things are in full swing. So we're growing again. But I never left. I love doing this. I plan vacations for people no differently than I would my own family. You know, I have told people, you know, a lot of salespeople, they feel like if they don't get someone on the hook that minute, that they're a lost sale. And I don't believe that. I have people calling me and telling me that they want to do one thing. And after speaking with them and getting to know them, you know, I tell them the best thing to do is for us to wait a month or two, because that'll be the best time to buy it. So, you know, I will not book that sale. I'll wait, and 99% of the time they call me back because they appreciate the honesty. So that's really what I do. I treat everybody as if I would my own family. I send them on vacations as I would my own family. And my clients are very happy with me.
They are. She's not kidding when she says that they write
No.
books in terms of
They
their
do. They really, really do. And so in our company, we have about 6,000 travel agents, and they have every month an award for the top 50 and then the top 25 of the 50. And I will tell you, month after month, thank you. I really, I appreciate it so much. I make that list. You know, it's, every month I think, I said, I'm not going to be there this time, you know, but I am. So we've gotten many awards, Thumbtack awards, certifications, destination wedding and honeymoon certifications. And then each of the resorts out there, they like for travel agents to also get recertified, some once a year, some once every 3 years, to make sure that we're up to date on the latest and the greatest and the newest and the amenities. And again, all that does is help us provide the right recommendations for the clients. So I get recertified. I'm a master agent, you know, sandals agent, master agent in AM Resorts. So, you know, I do everything in my power to make sure that, you know, we're up to date. And as I mentioned, we are a group of about 6,000 agents. So of course, as much as I would love to go to every hotel and every destination to make sure that they're, you know, up to standards to recommend to my clients, I'm just not able to do that. But because we have so many, every time somebody goes somewhere, they post pictures, they talk about the resort, the service, the food. So we're constantly sharing with one another, you know, the real reviews, not the reviews that you get online, because sometimes they're not so real, or, you know, maybe the person that's writing it, that's fantastic, to what their fantastic is might not be your fantastic, you know, for what you're paying. So anyway, so that's it really.
Yeah, no, it's so many things. And I mean, she also wasn't kidding when she said, basically, like, if you need a Disney not hookup, but if you need, like, you know, you want to plan a Disney cruise, if you want to plan a cruise to another part of the world, you know, if you want to do something
Everywhere.
you know, it's a European tour, if you want to do a castle tour, I mean, every type of travel trip we're able to accommodate with Dina and 5-Star Global Travel's help. And so we thought, because of course the world has changed so much, travel is in a new place. Of course, you know, countries around the world are dealing with inflation. You know, there are always challenges as it relates to, you know, us as single parents being able to sometimes afford the trips we'd like to take with our children. Sometimes there are challenges around us affording to, you know, pay for something, multiple trips per year. I thought it would be a good idea to give you guys access to someone who's extremely knowledgeable and successful, and really does obviously work very closely with us in particular as single parents about, you know, some of the things that she's seeing from an industry standpoint, and just some tips for you guys to think about as you're looking to book your trips in this season, and definitely moving into the spring break timeframe as well as the summer timeframe, because as I don't know about all of you, but I like to book my trips as early as possible and also we like to offer our group trips to you as early as possible too, to help you pay it off over time. So like, I'm curious, Dina, and I'm also being aware of what is being posted. If you guys have questions on the Facebook live thread, any questions that you have, but just Dina, can you talk to us about like what kind of time frame you can look at paying off a trip? If you're like, let's say a cruise, like you want to take it's a mom and 2 kids and they want to take a cruise to the Caribbean, like what kind of payment plan, and I know this is a very basic question,
Well,
can they look at in terms of like wanting to maybe book something for spring break 2024? Like, how does that work when they come to you?
so the cruises, again, a lot has changed, a lot has changed since COVID. We used to be able to see cruises 3 years out. They don't go that far out these days, but every cruise line goes out at different points in time. Cruises, I do recommend booking at least a year and a half out. you know get that refundable rate. You might pay a little more, and just also know, in general, we're talking about money. With 5-star global travel and single parents that travel, we have bulk space on cruises. So what that means to you is, we'll get, let's say, 30 rooms, and we get a special rate for that. Most of the time, it's significantly less than going direct to the cruise line. So it benefits you also to book sooner rather than later, because once we sell out of our cabins, then at that point we have no choice but just to go with whatever the cruise line's lowest rates are. And, like I said, most of the time our rates are lower. So it's best to try and get in on those lower rates. And the earlier you book, the more time you have, to pay it off. Typically today, cruises used to ask for payment in full 90 days out. Now it's 120 days out. So keep that in mind too, because that's why you want to book further out for those cruises. So
I'm curious, in terms of like some of the most popular, I don't know if they're more recent cruises for like families, which cruise lines, or not cruise lines, but which ships are you seeing that are really popular, like have some really cool offerings?
it depends on the ages of the kids too, but sorry. But Disney, of course, they're really great for all ages. That's the number one that I would say. And then Royal Caribbean, I would say, would be my second. I'm me personally, doesn't mean too much. Carnival would be, they do have a lot of great amenities for families, and things like that, but sometimes they can be a hit and miss. But I have some diehard Carnival, clients that they love them. They've been on them 20 times and never had a bad experience, So, but Carnival also does have a lot of, good amenities for kids. I would stay away from the Holland Americas and the Princess and even Celebrity. Those tend to be older, crowds. As also the river cruises. The river cruises also tend to be older. So those are the ones that I would stay away from. But when you're looking at Norwegian and Royal Caribbean and Disney, a lot of them, again, depending on the age of your children, whether they're teens or little ones, each of them have their own, parts and amenities that would accommodate. So it just depends on the ages of the family, but they all have something good to offer for all, all different types of families.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, and just obviously, with the shifts happening from COVID as it relates to, the cruise line in particular, like, are we feeling safer about going back on cruises? Are we still waiting to see, like, just kind of looking at that?
The cruise lines, have lifted, the pre-testing and things like that. for, I think, sailings after February. So it looks like things are going in the right direction, let's hope. We can only hope, but with anything, right? Flu season, this season, COVID, whatever it is, everyone needs to be a little more diligent, right? Washing their hands, especially before you eat and things like that. But I believe that things are going in the right direction, also based on when we're looking at the cruise lines, that they're putting out more and more itineraries now. They are putting they're posting the sailings a little later now, where before that they weren't even going 6 months out. Well, right after COVID, I should say, right? So it looks like things are going in a positive direction.
Excellent, excellent. So, something that's always a popular question for, among single parent families is like the discussion of the single parent or the single supplements, like if you're a parent and you're bringing your child, it's like what should we be expecting, to pay for one child, and I know this is a very vague sort of question, but and you're giving us some great suggestions in terms of booking early in regards to some trips, being aware of how far out you can book, that sort of thing. But the single supplements tends to be a question about how much should we be paying for our kids to travel? You know what I mean? If it's just us.
So typically you'll find the single supplements usually with something that is all-inclusive. So when you're looking at an all-inclusive resort, or if you're looking at a cruise, right, also is all-inclusive. I know that you have to pay extra for beverage packages, but the food is included. So typically, if you're one adult and one child, even if the child is only 7 years old, most, not all, but most will charge as if you were just two adults in the room. There's nothing to get around that other than asking another friend to come along and maybe they could carry that burden. And then this is where you can pay the child price for your child. But other than that, there's really nothing to get around it. Again, since you are really paying almost for two adults, the best recommendation is, again, just book early so you can make those payments over time. Again, we can only speak about us, right? We do not, when you're booking individual, we do not charge any fees. So if you wanted to go away with your family and you wanted to put, some money down and do payments over time, we don't charge any fees. We don't charge any interest. We don't ask you to sign up with any credit cards or anything like that. So we do allow those payments over time. And also know that whether you're with the single parents that travel group, or you book something individual just for you and your family and your friends, we print all of your travel documents for you. We mail them to your home. I know sometimes when I say that, that sounds a little antiquated, but also know that when you get to these resorts or you get to the transfer companies, they want to see that piece of paper still. So even though we think paper is antiquated these days, it's still necessary in other locations, but we print all your travel documents, we mail them to your home, and we mail them with travel gifts for each of the travelers. Sometimes they're passport holders, sometimes it's luggage tags and earbuds for the plane, because everybody's on Bluetooth and you get onto the plane and you want to watch the movie and all of a sudden you realize that they don't sync yet. Not all the planes anyway, and then they want to charge you $5 to put the earbuds on or something like that. So we send those for everybody. And sorry, I don't know if that was mine.
Yeah, that's okay. No worries.
Sorry. So now I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, and all these little things will be coming for all the guests of the Dominican Republic single parents travel annual trip. So you have those things to look forward to. Some gifts and perks, which come with what we like to provide in terms of.
But it's getting in those payments over time. That's really the best thing. And like I said, with the single supplements, there's not much that we can do about that. When it comes to travel to Europe, that's a different story, right? When it comes to travel, doing a South African safari, that's a different story. Then you're paying the adult rate and a child rate. If we did a other kind of group travel, right? If it's just you and your family, let's say of 4, not doing, one of Tamika's single parents that travel organized groups, usually again, there's an adult rate and a child rate. But when you're looking at all-inclusive resorts, majority of them will charge just as 2 adults, as well as the cruises.
Yeah. I mean, and, just to share my own personal story, one of the ways in which I used my own group years ago to kind of get around what it would be to pay so much for myself and my very small child at that time was I met someone in this group who lived locally, who, said that they wanted to go on a trip to Dubai. And we decided to explore the idea of traveling together. We had sons the same age. And so before we decided to, make it official, we did a meetup in the Washington, D.C. area. We met each other, then we introduced our kids at Chuck E. Cheese. They got along great. We felt comfortable to plan, that different aspects of the trip from the standpoint of we would share the costs of a auto rental or car rental to drive from one place to another place. We would share the cost of a hotel room. We would share the expensive food for like a family would. And well, we're all families by ourselves, but just in terms of a larger family. And we were both able to save a lot of money that way. So part of what we offer as a group is the ability to connect with one another, because we share the same goals of being able to take our kids on these really wonderful trips, as well as save money whenever possible.
Right.
So I definitely encourage people, especially on our group trips, to get to know one another. And that I have definitely seen. I have seen folks who connect on our annual group trips and they stay in touch and they become friends and they take trips together. And I think that is one of the best things about being a part of this community, because you understand that the possibilities are infinite in that way. So I'm very glad that you mentioned, just kind of how to get around
Right.
the challenges as they are, because obviously, we're not infinitely wealthy, most of us. And so we very much deserve to go on these really wonderful trips. So that's really great to hear. And I'm just kind of looking to see there's some other questions. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Rahman, go ahead and ask questions later on. I'll make sure they get to Dina if she has an opportunity to answer it later. We'll definitely follow up. So another popular question that we see in this group, and you may have insight into this, Dina, and you may not, but parents are constantly asking, which countries that they have to show proof of, the other parent's permission, for instance, if they're co-parenting, in order for them to travel to this country to get, if they want to take their child, their daughter or their son, to someplace in the world, do they need to travel with a letter that they can take to give the other country knowledge that this other parent has signed off on the trip? Does that make sense?
Yes, and it does exist. I mean, to sit off the top of my head, honestly, I couldn't tell you, but it's ever changing, right? It's just like when people ask me what countries, don't ask for vaccinated people. It's changing every day, so, and I honestly, I haven't had someone in that situation, for a while, but when someone tells me that they want to go somewhere, and they tell me it's just them and, their child and maybe the grandmother, with them, we give them all the links to the government websites and all the rules and the regulations for them to make sure that, do they need vaccination? Do they need a letter? Do they need any of that? So we make sure everybody is aware of their needs in order to make the trip seamless.
Perfect. So yeah, I mean, that's real. So, basically the answer is we help you to make sure that you're not going to get stuck out there and travel without knowledge in advance as to what's required. So of course you can do your online research, but we'll certainly be looking out for you as well as it relates to, making sure there are no surprises that could disrupt your trip. And I do see some other questions coming in here too as well. Go ahead if you want to say something else, Dina.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing, you also in these days, right? Again, I'm going to refer to COVID, but it doesn't matter with a letter or COVID or any kind of stipulations like that. What I tell people is, let's say they want to go to whatever, Jamaica, right? They say, okay, we're going to go to Jamaica. Do they ask for any COVID? Do they need a card? Do you need it? No, but tomorrow they can. So you have to feel comfortable knowing, that even though today they're not asking for something that you're concerned about, but tomorrow that they might. And if it's a real concern that, let's say, hands down, you are not getting vaccinated, you don't care, it doesn't matter, then for many reasons, I strongly recommend travel protection. Because of the uncertainty of things sometimes and forgetting even about COVID, just in life, I always say life shows up every day. People tell me I don't need travel protection because I'm going, come hell or high water, I am going on this trip. And, I really, in my head, I'm like, it's great you're so positive, but, God forbid, right? God forbid the day before you fell down the stairs and you broke your leg, or, whatever the case might be, just life shows up. So you have to feel comfortable in knowing that if you have certain grounds that, and standards that you won't do certain things, or you can't get a letter no matter what, or whatever the case might be, just know that that can change, even though today, when you book it, it was all clear, right? So just keep that in mind.
I could not agree more. We can speak from personal experience of parents who realize later that their kid has a tournament that's going to conflict with the travel dates, or someone in their family is sick and they can no longer go. If they have travel protection, then they are covered. If they do not, then they are not. And that is something that's beyond us at that point, because we always offer it. And, this leads to a really sort of great question, I think, that I've seen before in the group as well. Like, what are some of the companies that we work with that provide travel protection that we like in terms of their policies? Because I think that's definitely something that I saw during COVID as well. It's just like this conversation about, hey, some of these companies said this, that they were going to be, doing these things, and then we're finding out later that they're not covering. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So, when it comes to the Caribbean, right, because it depends on where you're going to, but when it comes to the Caribbean, and again, we're speaking just us, right? I'm not speaking for other agencies or anything like that, but the suppliers that I use, they really have great travel protection where it's canceled for any reason. So even if, I don't know, your dog, God forbid, got sick or something like that, or you got a surprise puppy for Christmas and you were supposed to leave the next day and you don't want to go or something, it's a cancel for any reason. Many companies got rid of that after COVID, because they didn't want people canceling left and right because everybody's got COVID, but throughout the entire COVID pandemic, at its height, when all the people that booked with us in 2019 for 2020, and we had to cancel everybody's, even the ones that were further out before they were actually canceling because they thought maybe this was going to be over soon, Travel Guard, AIG, they really, really came through for every single one of my clients, and when I say that, I mean, they really were fantastic. For those who decided that, before it was decided for them that they couldn't go, they were saying that, just send us proof that you canceled it, and whatever you paid for the insurance, and sometimes they were, $600-700, depending on how big of a package there was and where they were going in Europe. And they left it as a credit for them. They didn't refund them, but, they left it as a credit for them because, well, let me not confuse the situation, because the suppliers that booked the actual trips, right, were giving people their money back. So they didn't have to use the travel insurance, right? But once you purchase insurance, right? We purchase car insurance every month. If we don't get into an accident, they don't give us the money back, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the way insurance works. So they didn't have to give them credit for it, especially that the companies gave all the money back to the clients. But they allowed them to, to keep it. And all my clients that rebooked, they didn't have to pay now for the travel protection, and then I've had people outside of COVID pandemic that have used them that last minute they couldn't go for whatever reason. Right, Tamika, we know the plane that was supposed to get there, right? Costa Rica, all of a sudden plane got canceled and they're not running another plane for 2 days, They had travel protection, they got their money back.
Yep.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So, AIG is great, if you're not booking through Caribbean. And again, I'm just speaking when you're working with us. There's the Allianz is another good company. So they were really great with people. And like I said, for the Caribbean, we have to cancel for any reason. So that's it. I mean, you don't get any better than that. You do not,
Fantastic.
So,
yeah. I'm really glad you guys are asking such great questions.
One more
Oh.
thing I do want to add, just keep in mind with travel protection, it's not just about protecting the trip that you might not be able to go on. The biggest thing that I've seen families have to pay out of pocket is that medical part. The travel protection that we offers also medical, because you cannot go over to Italy and God forbid, again, let's just say, you twisted your ankle or something like that, or, you caught a flu, whatever the case might be. You can't go to their doctors or their hospital and say, here's my Blue Cross Blue Shield, or here, that's an American health insurance. So the good thing about the travel protection also provides you with medical coverage should you need it while you're traveling outside the country. So that's the other thing that I think is the bigger picture, because in my own experience, even I had an instance where someone was on a cruise and they ended up having a brain aneurysm. And on that cruise, they had to get helivaced off. Well, that helivac was $125,000. So luckily, they had, $100,000 in coverage, plus they got a little bit of a reimbursement from their at-home insurance, you know what I'm saying? Because the out of network, after paying the, whatever, but you do want that coverage, so that's it. All right.
100%. Also, and sometimes people talk about, are you able to get that kind of coverage on a credit card using whatever credit card you're using? Like, is that also another possibility too?
Absolutely. I again, you're not going to get a cancel for any reason usually with your credit cards. So if we're talking about Caribbean, I do recommend going with the insurance that we have, and it's not expensive, but I do tell people when you're traveling, at all, right? Check with your credit card companies. First, check with your credit card companies to see if they cover, certain portions, or the whole thing. Some of them will only do the flight or, things like that. But check to see if you charge on a certain card that they do provide the travel protection. And also keep in mind that when you're traveling outside the United States, a lot of credit cards, they will charge you fees for charging outside the United States. So just on an off topic real quick, the other recommendation I give people is check all your credit cards before you go away. Find out if they're going to charge a fee in the country that you're going to, and try to use the one that either has the lowest fee or no fee whatsoever, before you travel.
Excellent tip. And so I see a couple of questions we have. Do we offer travel that also includes autistic children? And the answer is emphatically yes.
Absolutely.
In fact, one one of the reasons why, we are doing what we're doing is to be as inclusive as possible to all kids and all families. And so, when you talk to us, when you speak to Dina, she can definitely kind of let you know what opportunity, whatever she's able to tell you about the place that we're going, and whatever accommodations, if need be, need to be created so that your family has not only a good time, a safe time, and you feel as comfortable as possible in terms of being supported. So, let's talk a little bit about that in terms of like what kind of family dynamics and setups that you have worked with, so that everyone feels good and
Well, a lot of the resorts, especially again, if we're looking in the Caribbean, and not only the Caribbean, of course, there are certain places for those that have certain special needs, like wheelchairs, right? You're not going to be going to climb a mountain, right? So, those vacations, and it's anyone of all ages. Like one of the first questions that I ask when people call is, does anyone have any mobility issues or any special needs or anything like that? Again, to make sure that we're getting them to the right place and the right resort. Of course, it's also going to depend on their ages and everything like that. Luckily, these days, most resorts, all the cruise lines, they are accessible, for those that have the special needs or mobility issues and things along those lines, but we just speak with the families, again, ask them where they've been before, good and bad experiences, because there's so many different levels, right? So what one person might be able to do, another one can't. So to put a blanket on these are the best places, but if we're talking about children, like I said, a lot of the resorts today are all accessible, and accommodate those with special needs. Beaches is a great one. They really are. They're fantastic. But again, it's so, we personalize it for each family based on the do's and the don'ts and the cans and the can'ts of the family. And, we'll give the recommendations based on that, on where to go and best things to do and, stuff like that.
Absolutely. So, another question people have asked is, when is the Dominican Republic single parent trip coming up, which is our annual, thanks for asking, that's our annual single parents who travel trip, and it's this summer. And we're traveling to Nickelodeon in Punta Cana. We're extremely excited about that trip. If you are able to see it, at the top of the Single Parents Who Travel page, there's a flyer that shares the dates. So the dates are July 10th through July 15th. However, Dina can always work with you if you want to extend your trip. How you sign up for it is we have underneath that banner at the top of the Single Parents Who Travel group page, there are a number of links, the first of which is a registration form. So when you fill that form out, it provides, your basic needs, the travelers, their ages, where you're located, which airport you'll need to fly out of. It will also give you an indication to indicate what size room you're looking for, or what configuration room you're looking for. But once Dina receives the information that you fill out on the form, that's when she can get on the phone with you. And Dina, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have additional questions, or she has additional questions for you as well. We've definitely heard you guys in terms of sometimes it is easier to just fill out a form and then we're all done and then that's it. But as Dina has been doing a very good job, I think, of explaining, is like sometimes the forms don't catch everything, or sometimes there's an opportunity to have a conversation with Dina that will help you learn, hey, this is the place that we really do want to go to, because I feel good as a parent that let's just say my autistic child is going to have a great experience based on the offerings. Or sometimes you'll learn, hey, maybe this trip isn't necessarily for us. Maybe we want to go on another trip where, Dina can talk a little bit more about better options. So what we are trying to do basically is make sure that at the end of the day, you are pleased that there are no surprises, and that even some of the things that you may not think of to tell us initially to make sure that you have the best possible experience, it will be unearthed in the conversation. As Dina said at the beginning of this, if you guys didn't chime in earlier, is like her goal as well as my goal is joy. It is to make sure that there's no surprises, to make sure that you feel very comfortable with what you're getting. And a lot of times a quick call doesn't have to be, something long and drawn out, just allows us to make sure we're all on the same page. And, we're not trying to take any money from you, understanding just how hard earned it is, if we don't feel like it's going to be the best possible experience that you can have. So that's the intention. I know it's more than what you asked for with your question, but I thought it would be good to kind of give you that sense of how it is that you can still sign up for that trip, because we do have a few slots left. This is going to be a very well-attended trip. It already is one of our best attended trips, signed up for trips. Nickelodeon is one of the best in the world as it relates to family vacations. We make it our business to only take you to highly rated family destinations. I know some of the feedback we've received is that we do a lot of all-inclusives. This is true. The reason being because, a lot of parents need a break. So all-inclusives and cruises allow the kids to have a great time and the parents to breathe deep and also enjoy each other. I will say this, though, we're certainly looking at and really excited to be able to share some up and coming trips with you guys that are going to be more off the beaten path for single parents who travel. Just kind of give an opportunity to look at other places in the world in addition to the Caribbean. So we definitely invite you to stay tuned for some of the upcoming announcements we have in regards to that, but that's a little bit about that. A question that Megan Ann asked is, do you only offer international travel? Absolutely not. We're thinking you're in the US, but Dina, she definitely has all kinds of recommendations in regards to trips right here in the United States.
Absolutely. There are less options, there aren't any all-inclusive. Well, there's one all-inclusive in the United States, but it's an adult only, but if you're looking for, obviously we do Disney trips, of course. And we also do not only to Disney World or Disneyland, but we do Adventures by Disney, which is also a lot of fun for families that, they're not in well, I think actually there might be some in the States, like if you wanted to do things like Grand Canyon and along those lines, you're taking a trip with friends, no kids, maybe going to New Orleans or something like that. So we do bookings for inside the United States as well.
Yeah, I mean, and Dina's making a wonderful point. We do family trips, but not exclusively.
Right.
Again, she's doing my wedding. That is got some kids, but very few kids. And we're going to Turks and Caicos. She does weddings beautifully. She does destination trips for singles. She does them for,
girls getaways, guys getaways, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, Tamika and I were saying maybe, all the moms just need to get away or something like that. So we do for everything, whether it's one person that just needs to go somewhere, right? The only thing that we don't do, put it this way, we do everything. Group trips, doesn't matter where in the world you want to go, even within the United States. The only thing that we don't do is air only. Can we do it? Yes. I don't do it because, one of the things that I started off saying is we don't charge any fees. So because we don't charge any fees for our services, unfortunately, travel agents, when they're not booking packages, we don't make a nickel on air only. And as much as I love doing what I do, I don't want to do it for free. So right, so that's the only thing that we don't do. But like I said, you want to go to New Orleans, you want to take a trip to Miami, you want to go to Disney, you want to, right, New York, right, whatever, wherever, Hawaii, we do a lot of Hawaii, so and anywhere you want to go, we can accommodate that.
Excellent. And so that leads right into another question that Karen asked. Does your agency offer service to non-US clients? What does that look like, Dina?
So, yes. The answer is yes, but the services are more limited. So in the United States, there aren't any travel agents that can book someone from London, starting off over there, coming here or anywhere else, right? So that person that you want to meet up with, let's say in St. Martin, right, who wants to, go to from London to there, we would be able to do their hotel. We would be able to accommodate them with the transfers, picking them up from the airport to the hotel, but we would not be able to do the air portion of their trip. It's just, there's no capability of doing that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And you guys still keep your questions coming. We have a few more minutes. I do know that another question that we received was, are there upcoming group travel trips being planned? Absolutely. We mentioned that a little while ago. In fact, we should have a couple of new announcements for you in the coming weeks. But just in case you missed it, though, we actually did make an announcement last week about two, not one, but two spring break trips that are special group trips to St. Martin that we're offering right now. The dates, two different dates, because it was such a popular idea. One is from March 13th through the 17th, and the other one is from April the 3rd through the 7th, because as you can imagine, spring break is different for schools and states across the United States in this case. And so we want to be able to accommodate as many people as possible. Now we're calling this a special group trip because I will not be on the ground for these trips. However, because it is such a desired thing for members of this group to be able to travel together as single parent families, because what we've done, and you guys will see this too, we've run some polls, but a lot of what we've understood about this group in terms of its demographics is that a lot of us are the single parent of one child. And so and this, of course, is not nearly all of us, but just a lot of the folks that we see in terms of our group trips. So one of the built-in values is, your child has someone that they can connect to and hang out with and enjoy their time with at a resort or on a cruise ship or wherever we go. And so a lot of parents value that, as well as connecting to other parents from their area or beyond in order to take future trips. So that's the thinking behind these special group trips. And just because I won't be there does not mean that we were not totally happy to arrange for anything and everything that we could possibly do as it relates to excursions that you want to take in St. Martin. If you're desiring to to travel from St. Martin to someplace else, if you have extended time, for instance, we can help accommodate that because some of the islands are close together. So if you're interested, I would definitely sign up as soon as possible, because of course spring break will be here like yesterday. We have a very limited payment plan because of that. So I would definitely, if you haven't already seen the sign-up sheets, we've got them pinned to the top of the group page. Go ahead and fill out a form. We definitely heard you, for those of you who are more interested in filling out a form to get the information sent to you. So that's possible. If you also would like to be able to just chat with Dina about any questions that you have, Dina, could you provide your phone number and your email address?
Absolutely. So it's on our website as well, of course, 5-Star Global Travel. You could always contact me through there. And again, you can contact direct at 917-992-1536. Before we wrap it up, since you did ask for the telephone number, and well, the email address is very long. It's it's dreamteam at the number 5, so don't spell it out. So it's dreamteam at 5starglobaltravel.com. I'll leave you guys with this. One of the questions that people do ask is, I think I could find it cheaper online if I do it myself. Those days are gone. Those days are definitely gone. We get such great pricing My mind is sometimes even like, I just don't understand how much lower. And I can give you, one quick example. There's a hotel, in Mexico, and a family, it was a large family that wanted to go away, going direct to the hotel's website, the whole trip. And again, there were a lot of people, but the whole trip came to $31,000. Of course, people are going to go look online. I'll tell you that Expedia was at about 30,000, not much less than what the hotel was. And our price was 26,000. So that was a great savings, but also keep in mind, these websites, the Expedias and, the online search engines, they're not personalizing anything for you. Number one. Number two, that you have to look and see when they do allow the payments over time, they are charging fees. If you added up what you have to put down, plus all the payments over the X amount of months, you'll see you're paying more than what that package price is showing. Also, if you run into any kind of hiccups, right? People go away during Christmas break. There's a snowstorm in the tri-state area a few years ago, 5,000 flights canceled. Think about it. Who are you getting through to faster? Dina on her 917 number, or Expedia on their 1-800 number, who leaves you on hold for 3 hours and then picks up and hangs up? So you have someone in your back pocket at all times when you travel, and you're getting a better deal. You will never, ever, ever pay more with us. You'll either pay the same or less than going direct, for you and your family, to do your individual vacations and so on and so forth. So that's the benefits of going through a travel agent. You have someone who's personal, who wants to make sure that you're getting to the best place, not just by clicking a couple of buttons and, reading, okay, there are 5 people and they don't want to spend more than this. And also have a budget. This is an investment for you. You're investing in your time, your money, have a budget. If you're going to buy a house or a couch, you're going to look at your expenses and say, okay, we can't do more than $3,000 for the couch, and that's it. That's what we could afford. Same thing for a vacation. A lot of people are afraid to give that number out. But what's the point of me sending you things that are going to be outside your budget? And then you're going to tell me, no, we weren't thinking 5,000, we're thinking more 3. So then I'm just going to do what I could have done in the beginning, right? So have a ballpark number in your mind, and you can always change that number. So if you tell me $3,000 and I have you staying at a Ritz-Carlton every night, then say, we don't need Ritz-Carlton. Show me how much money I could save with a Marriott, or the other way around. If I have you in a Days Inn, which I would never do. But if I have you at a Days Inn every night, for you to say, you know what, we're willing to go a little higher than that 3,000 to see maybe a Marriott and see what that would look like. So, but know your number. Yeah, it helps you, not waste your time, getting things that you can't, vacations that you can't take. So I'll leave you with those 2 things as to why it's better to book through an agent than just doing it yourself directly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Dina, if you don't mind, we just have 2 more quick questions, if that's
Sure.
okay with you.
Yeah, fine.
I'll answer Ted Bailey. Thank you. You said, wait, I'm late. You're planning an island trip. We're planning 3, Ted. We've got the Dominican Republic in July, and we have 2 spring break trips to St. Martin. So hopefully you can join us on one or both of those options. And then I also saw someone ask in the group, Louise, thank you so much for your question. What's your take on using timeshares that allow you to access to hotels all over the world? What's your take on timeshares, Dina?
So timeshares, I'll tell you this. The people that I know that had the timeshares, and I say had, got rid of them for reasons, but it does work for some people. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. It works for some, but it doesn't work for most. You're limited. You have to wait for a certain week. Some people, they want to be more flexible. So I hear more negative than positive. I've seen a lot more people get rid of theirs over the years. I think years ago, it was a good thing. But these days I'm not hearing, that so much. And I'm just going to touch on another subject quickly because you brought up timeshare. As a global agent, so I can make money. I can make commission going through like a VRBO, right? Airbnbs and all that. Just really be careful with them. I hear all the horror stories. I'm the one who gets all the clients that have